Right now, tens of millions of published academic papers circulate, making the pursuit of scientific truth highly chaotic. This is the replication crisis. A massive percentage of peer-reviewed results fail to reproduce, shattering into static when scientists repeat the exact tests. This crisis proves that peer review is merely an administrative hurdle. It screens for basic coherence, but it offers no guarantee of truth. Scientific validity is not discovered in the wild. It is a strict structure actively engineered by the researcher. Building that structure requires three mechanical phases: establishing strict epistemic boundaries, capturing actual mathematical reality, and structurally filtering out systemic threats. Failing at any one of these phases creates false data, permanently polluting the collective scientific record. Phase 1 begins with the literature review. Novice researchers mistake this for a chronological summary, listing one piece of literature after another by the author's name. As this diagram illustrates, the true function of a literature review is analytical synthesis. It requires grouping prior work by distinct theoretical approaches, specific methodologies, or historical trends to see where researchers align into camps. By organizing the existing literature thematically, you map the absolute perimeter of human knowledge on a topic. The negative space in the center is the research gap. This isolated unknown provides the strict justification for a new investigation, yielding a singular question to answer. A passing interest in a topic cannot locate this void. Investigators must read an exhaustive volume of literature to definitively prove the gap actually exists. Comparing the exact methodologies of these differing theoretical camps identifies their historical strengths and weaknesses. This prevents you from repeating past systemic mistakes. Throughout this synthesis, the researcher must maintain their own analytical voice. You are evaluating the evidence, not acting as a stenographer for past scientists. Without a thematic synthesis to precisely isolate a true research gap, you are merely echoing existing work instead of expanding human knowledge. Once the gap is defined, we enter Phase 2, data collection. Before taking a single measurement, you must explicitly define the target population. Consider a case where two researchers evaluated the training of clinical psychology students. They sent a detailed survey to every U.S. doctoral program, receiving completed responses from nearly 95% of them. When they submitted their findings, a professional journal editor rejected the paper, claiming the authors failed to run tests for statistical significance. The editor was mathematically incorrect. As this diagram shows, the researchers did not take a small sample. They captured a complete census of the population. When you measure an entire defined population, the resulting data are parameters, absolute, exhaustive facts describing reality. Probability testing is irrelevant because there is nothing left to estimate. This contrasts sharply with probability sampling, where researchers use a smaller, representative group to estimate the parameters of a much larger population. Tests of statistical significance exist strictly to determine if the differences observed in a limited sample are due to random chance. They are entirely the wrong tool for analyzing a near-total census. Even when sampling, researchers must distinguish between probability sampling, where every subject's chance of inclusion is known, and non-probability sampling, which cannot be reliably generalized to the broader public. Confusing population parameters with sample statistics completely dismantles the mathematical architecture of a study, entirely invalidating its final conclusions. Even with precise sampling, researchers must navigate Phase 3, bias filtration. During the physical collection process, data is highly vulnerable to warping. This warping is known as systematic error, or research bias. It forms a matrix of operational threats that silently compromise scientific integrity. One operational threat is the Hawthorne effect. Human participants will subconsciously alter their behavior, working harder or acting differently, simply because they know they are being observed. Another is measurement bias. If data collection tools are flawed, recording methods are inconsistent, or observations are interpreted subjectively, the underlying numbers become permanently skewed. Selection bias occurs when the initial grouping or exclusion of participants creates a sample that fails to accurately represent the mathematical reality of the target population. In qualitative research, this often manifests as interviewer bias, where a researcher's own tone, opinions, or beliefs pressure a subject into responding a certain way. If these operational biases are not actively anticipated and structurally filtered out during the experiment's design, the raw data is poisoned before analysis even begins. The threat continues after the data is collected. Researchers can corrupt their own clean data through confirmation bias, interpreting ambiguous results to fit predetermined hypotheses while ignoring alternative explanations. Even worse is reporting bias. This is the highly unethical practice of selectively omitting valid data simply because it contradicts the researcher's personal beliefs or desired outcomes. We see a catastrophic real-world autopsy of these failures in the infamous, now retracted study by Andrew Wakefield. This paper incorrectly linked the MMR vaccine to autism. Investigations revealed a complete breakdown of scientific integrity, driven by rampant, unchecked selection and reporting biases. Because the mechanics of the research failed, the resulting publication triggered a wave of widespread public health misinformation. Post-collection biases weaponize scientific papers. They transform objective inquiries into instruments of societal harm. Stepping back from the individual researcher, we have to evaluate the global ecosystem of academic publishing and institutional methodology. This is the domain of metascience, the rigorous, high-level study of research practices themselves, aimed at detecting methodological flaws and inefficiencies across all fields. Metascience reveals how institutional pressures create publication bias. Academic journals overwhelmingly choose to publish positive, statistically significant findings, while quietly burying negative results. It also tracks funding bias, mapping how financial sponsorship systematically bends the outcomes of studies to support corporate or institutional interests. To survive this environment, a bias-resistant study must be built from the ground up. As this architectural model demonstrates, it requires thematic synthesis for a solid foundation, rigorous probability sampling as the scaffolding, and strict bias filtration as a structural stress test. This architecture ensures generalizability, meaning the specific results of the study remain valid when applied to broader populations and different regions. Researchers cannot be passive reporters of data. They must operate as rigorous architects of valid methodologies. By mastering thematic synthesis, precise sampling, and ruthlessly eliminating bias, researchers build the reliable, generalizable knowledge required to overcome the replication crisis and actually advance human understanding.